Think about a concrete wall for a second. Like when you look at it, you know exactly what it is.
Right. Yeah, it's right there in front of you.
Exactly. You can measure its height, you can, test its thickness, and you know precisely what kind of machinery you need to break it down. It is a physical, logical barrier.
Yeah, you can plan for it.
Exactly. But today, we are pulling from a really fascinating source that reveals that the most impenetrable barriers on Earth, they aren't made of concrete at all.
No, they really aren't.
They're made of bureaucratic red tape, deeply ingrained cultural shame, and sometimes literal gunfire. Welcome to the Missions Connect Deep Dive.
It is so great to be here because what we are really examining today is the evolution of resistance.
Yeah.
Like, how do different societies push back against a message that actively threatens their status quo?
Exactly. And our specific mission today is to prepare your mind and your heart for the upcoming week's content on the Missions Connect app. And if you don't know, Missions Connect is a Bible-based and missions-focused devotional and prayer app, and it's a ministry of assistingtoobey.com.
It's an incredible tool.
It really is. So we are exploring the weekly preview for week 19, which covers May 4th through the 10th, 2026. And the through line we are tracing today is how resistance to the gospel evolves across three very distinct Asian landscapes.
Yes, and they are so different.
So different. We are going to move from the blunt force of physical violence in Myanmar to the sophisticated bureaucratic legal walls of the 1040 window, and finally to the ultimate invisible barrier, which is psychological and cultural immunity in Japan.
What's fascinating here is that each of these regions requires a completely different approach. I mean, you cannot use the same tools to bypass a legal ban that you would use to, say, survive a war zone or navigate a really deep cultural taboo.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the realities presented in the weekly preview for week 19, I mean, they are heavy.
They are very heavy.
But we are going to break down exactly how these barriers function, why they exist, and how you can actively engage with them this week. So let's start with the most visceral blunt force resistance, Myanmar.
Right. If we are looking at the evolution of resistance, Myanmar represents the most ancient form, right? Sheer physical violence.
Yeah.
Since the military coup in 2021, the country has just been shattered by active, relentless warfare.
And the human cost detailed in the weekly preview, it's just staggering.
Yeah.
We're looking at 3.5 million people internally displaced.
Wow.
Entire communities just forced out into the jungle. And the targeting is highly specific. Just in Chin State alone, the military has firebombed over 70 churches. Pastors are being actively hunted down.
It's horrific. And yet, amidst this absolute chaos, the weekly preview highlights a specific group of people who just refuse to stop working.
The translators.
Yes, the indigenous Bible translators, supported by global organizations like Wycliffe Bible Translators, SIL International, and Pioneer Bible Translators.
Right.
These local believers are continuing to translate the scriptures into their native dialects while artillery shells are literally dropping around them.
Okay, I have to stop you there and challenge the premise of this.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of people listening might be wondering the exact same thing. I struggle to see the logic here, honestly.
How so?
Well, you have 3.5 million people who need immediate, tangible survival resources.
Yeah.
They need antibiotics, clean water, tarps, food. Why is anyone prioritizing translating a text in the middle of a literal war?
It seems counterintuitive.
It does. It feels like trying to, I don't know, meticulously organize a library
Yeah.
while the building is actively burning to the ground.
Well, if you view the Bible purely as a piece of literature, that critique is entirely valid.
Right.
But to understand why this is happening, we really have to look at the psychology and the history of Myanmar's ethnic minorities. We are talking about groups like the Karen, the Kachin, and the Chin. For these specific ethnic groups, their language and their faith are entirely fused with their cultural identity. Up to 90 to 95% of the Kachin people identify as Christian.
Wait, 90 to 95%?
Yes. And in Chin State, it is around 85%.
Wow. Okay, so the military isn't just trying to seize territory. They are trying to enforce a monoculture.
Exactly. The ruling military forces operate on this nationalist ideology that heavily associates true citizenship with the majority religion and the majority language.
Oh, I see.
So when they attack the Kachin or the Chin, the goal is ethnic and cultural erasure. In that context, language is the only boundary keeping these minorities from total assimilation.
Which completely flips the script on what translation means in this environment.
It really does. Translating the Bible into their mother tongue, it isn't an academic luxury. It is an act of profound spiritual and cultural defiance.
That's powerful.
It is a way of saying our language matters, our existence matters, and the God of the universe speaks our dialect.
Yeah.
The word of God anchors their psychological survival. If they stop translating because of the bombs, well, the military achieves its goal of erasing their voice.
That makes total sense. The translation is the anchor.
Hmm.
But the weekly preview then pivots to a fascinating paradox right next door, still within Myanmar. The Shan people.
Right, the share.
Because their situation is the exact opposite.
They really present a completely different mechanism of resistance. They are a massive ethnic group, over 6 million strong.
Huge.
Yeah, and unlike the groups dodging bombs to finish their translation, the Shan actually have a completed Bible. The linguistic work is done.
But the outcome is totally inverted. Despite having a finished translation, only 0.9% of the Shan people identify as Christian.
Less than 1%.
It's a scenario where the text exists, but the witnesses don't. There is no local community of believers to actually live out the text, to contextualize it and bring it to life in a way the culture can actually digest.
Which is exactly why the weekly preview points us to Isaiah 55, verse 11 for this region. It is the promise that God's word will not return empty, but will accomplish its purpose. The call for week 19 is to pray for that exact gap,
Yes.
protection for the translators under fire in Chin State, and the raising up of physical messengers for the Shan people who have the book, but they desperately need the human connection.
And that mechanism, the lack of messengers, that is the perfect bridge to our second topic.
It is.
Because if we zoom out from Myanmar, the resistance evolves. It's no longer just a military trying to erase a minority with bullets. What happens when a state uses its entire bureaucratic and legal apparatus to keep the message out?
You enter the 1040 window.
Right. And just to define this for you, if you aren't familiar with the term, the 1040 window is a geographical rectangle on the map stretching across North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia.
And the statistics in the weekly preview are just mind-bending.
Yeah, they are.
3.28 billion people live in this window. It contains 6,013 unreached people groups.
And we should clarify what unreached actually means in this context.
Definitely. It doesn't mean people who heard the gospel and said, no, thank you.
Right.
It means people who structurally, geographically, and linguistically have zero access to it. There is no church down the street, no Bible in their language, and no local believer to talk to.
The result is that 80,000 people in this region pass away every single day without ever having a single encounter with the gospel.
80,000 every day.
And the reason for this is entirely structural. The weekly preview notes that more than 85% of the governments in this region restrict or completely prohibit foreign religious workers. The state is essentially the bouncer.
Yes, the resistance here is deeply bureaucratic. These governments view foreign religious influence as a destabilizing force.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, and where we kind of have to look in the mirror.
Okay.
How does the global church respond to this bureaucratic wall? According to the data in the weekly preview, only 3.4% of the world's missionaries are serving among these 3.28 billion people.
It's a huge disparity.
But the financial stat is what really gets me. Out of every $100 given to global missions, exactly 5 cents goes to the 1040 window.
5 cents.
Yeah.
It reveals a profound psychological bias in global philanthropy, really.
Let's explore that, because at first glance, it just looks like a massive misallocation of funds. Are you saying there's a psychological reason behind that 5 cents?
Absolutely. Think about it. Human beings, even generous ones, naturally want a return on their investment.
Sure.
When we give money to a cause, we want to see the new church building. We want to see photos of a thriving community. We fund what is accessible and visibly successful.
That makes sense.
But the 1040 window doesn't offer that. It offers incredibly slow, highly dangerous, largely invisible work behind closed borders. So we end up buying more books for the library in the safe neighborhood while the fire rages across town.
Wow. We fund the accessible, not the essential. That is a really sharp insight. But it begs the question, if 85% of these borders are legally closed to missionaries, how do you even get in? The weekly preview talks about a pivot to creative access. What is the actual mechanism of that?
Creative access is essentially entering these countries through legitimate professional avenues. You don't apply for a religious visa, you apply for a work visa.
Okay.
Mission agencies send engineers, doctors, English teachers, and business entrepreneurs. You provide a service that the host country desperately needs for its own economic or social development. That gets you the visa, and then you live out your faith relationally in the marketplace.
Okay, I'm going to push back on the logistics of this.
Go for it.
Because that sounds like an incredibly romanticized view of a Trojan horse strategy.
Yeah.
Let's be real. If you go in as a structural engineer in a developing nation, that is a grueling 60-hour-a-week job.
Oh, absolutely.
Add in learning a notoriously difficult language, navigating a totally foreign culture, and D, trying to covertly plant a house church network without getting deported. That sounds like a fast track to complete an utter burnout. Is that actually an efficient strategy?
You are identifying the exact pressure point, and your critique is spot on. It is a recipe for burnout if the goal is for the foreigner to do all the work.
Right.
And that is why the weekly preview makes a really crucial distinction here. The creative access worker isn't there to be the hero who plants 50 churches. They are there to be the catalyst for indigenous believers.
Ah, okay. The inside-out strategy.
Precisely. An indigenous believer already speaks the language perfectly. They understand the cultural nuances you'd never grasped. And most importantly, they don't need a visa.
They already live there.
Exactly.
Right.
The goal of the creative access worker is to find, equip, and encourage those local believers who then multiply the house churches organically through their own hidden social networks.
So the foreigner is just passing the spark over the bureaucratic wall, but the local believers are the ones actually building the fire.
That's a great way to put it.
That makes the logistics infinitely more sustainable. And it really grounds the focus first for this section, Matthew 24, verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. It requires a massive collaboration between those who bring the spark and those who fan the flame.
Which brings us to our final region and what I think is the most complex mechanism of resistance.
Yes. Let's trace the evolution one more time. We started with Myanmar, where the state uses physical violence to crush the message.
Yes.
Then we looked at the 1040 window, where the state uses the law to keep the message out. But what happens when the state doesn't care at all?
Right.
What happens when a country is completely legally open, highly educated, fiercely modernized, and has had a continuous missionary presence for 450 years?
You are describing Japan.
I am. Japan is the ultimate anomaly. On paper, it should be the most accessible, fertile mission field on Earth.
It really should be.
And yet, according to the weekly preview, only about 1.1% of the population, roughly 1 in 200 people, identify as Christian. It feels like Japan operates as a cultural immune system. Like, when a foreign element enters the body, even a benevolent one, the white blood cells rush to attack it. Not out of malice, but just to maintain homeostasis. What is it about the Japanese cultural immune system that makes it so impenetrable?
To understand the white blood cells in your metaphor, you have to look at the hidden spiritual architecture of Japanese society.
Okay.
The West often views Japan as highly secular, but it is actually deeply syncretic, meaning Shinto, Buddhism, and folk traditions are inextricably woven together into the social fabric. It is not about personal belief, it is about collective harmony.
And the weekly preview zeroes in on one specific practice that acts as the core of this immune system, the Butsudan.
Yes, the Butsudan. It is a Buddhist family altar found in approximately 60% of Japanese homes.
Wait, 60%? That's huge.
It's everywhere. Visually, it is often this beautifully crafted wooden cabinet containing religious icons, incense, and memorials for deceased ancestors. But functionally, it is the center of family identity. Ancestor veneration is how you show respect for your lineage and maintain your place within the family structure.
So let's put this in practical terms. When a Christian worker in Tokyo shares the gospel and says, "Follow Christ," the Western mind hears an invitation to personal salvation. But what is the Japanese listener actually hearing?
Well, because Christ makes exclusive claims, meaning he is the only way the Japanese listener hears, you must abandon your ancestors, you must step outside the harmony of your family.
Oh, wow.
Choosing to follow Christ feels like a profound betrayal of your parents and grandparents. You become the virus that the immune system has to isolate. The social cost is astronomical.
That is so heavy. The barrier isn't a government edict, it's the profound terror of disappointing your family.
Exactly.
And there's a devastating psychological toll to this hyper-conformist culture, which the weekly preview highlights when it addresses the youth crisis.
It is easily the most sobering part of the report. The pressure to maintain harmony, to achieve academically, and to never burden anyone else, it has created an absolute epidemic of isolation.
The statistics are heartbreaking. A record 529 student suicides in 2024 alone. And overall, more than 3,000 young people between the ages of 15 and 29 are dying by suicide every single year in Japan.
It's tragic, and it raises an important question. Why is a generation in such a safe, technologically advanced nation perishing from despair?
Right.
It is because they are starved for unconditional belonging. The cultural immune system demands performance and conformity to earn your place.
Yeah.
The gospel offers grace and belonging without prerequisite, which is exactly what these young people are dying for, but they are terrified to reach for it because of the cultural shame attached to it.
Which perfectly frames how the weekly preview approaches the concept of spiritual warfare in this context.
Yes.
It's not spooky, Hollywood-style spiritual warfare. It is the analytical reality that human logic cannot talk someone out of a stronghold built from centuries of family honor and deep-seated shame. That requires a complete paradigm shift.
It really does.
That is why the focus verse here is 2 Corinthians 10, verse 4. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds.
Exactly. For the isolated Japanese believers who do step out and face that cultural resistance, the psychological weight is crushing. Knowing that the global church is actively interceding for them, it provides a literal lifeline for their mental and spiritual endurance.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've looked at literal war zones where translators are dodging bombs.
Yeah.
We've looked at billions of unreached people behind bureaucratic walls, heavily underfunded because of our own psychological biases. And we've looked at a heartbreaking youth crisis trapped inside a cultural immune system in Japan.
Yeah.
How do you engage with this without feeling totally paralyzed by information overload?
That is exactly why the Missions Connect app is designed the way it is. The goal of the weekly preview isn't to crush you with the weight of global tragedy. It is to give you a highly specific, highly structured mechanism to engage.
The action plan for week 19 is incredibly straightforward. The app guides you through a 7-day structured prayer journey.
Yes.
The challenge is to commit 15 minutes a day. That's 5 minutes for Myanmar, 5 minutes for the 1040 window, and 5 minutes for Japan. And if you are commuting or running on a tight schedule, the app has 4 to 5 minute pre-recorded daily prayers that guide you through all 3 regions efficiently.
And it is vital to note that this isn't just about reciting facts.
Right.
The week is anchored in daily devotionals to align your perspective. Monday reflects on Isaiah 6, verse 8, answering the call to go.
Tuesday looks at John 10, verse 16, the reality that there are other sheep who must be brought in.
Wednesday sits in Psalm 126, verses 5 and 6, acknowledging the tears required in sowing seeds.
And Thursday focuses on Isaiah 42, verses 6 and 7, the promise of bringing light to those living in darkness.
Right.
And I think sometimes it's easy to wonder, does my 15 minutes in my living room actually do anything?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the physics of prayer. You may never sit in a displacement camp in Shan State.
Probably not.
You may never navigate the complexities of securing a creative access visa in the Middle East. But in the spiritual realm, distance means absolutely nothing.
Wow, yeah.
When you intercede, you are actively participating in the demolition of those strongholds. You are providing real-time spiritual cover for that indigenous church planter. Your prayers literally bypass the concrete walls, the border patrols, and the cultural immune systems.
Before we wrap up, I know you always like to leave us with something to chew on that goes a little beyond the text.
Always.
When you look at these 3 distinct types of resistance, violence, bureaucracy, and culture, what stands out to you?
Here's a final thought for you to mull over this week. We tend to assume that freedom makes faith easier, but look at the trajectory we just mapped out. In Myanmar, under intense military persecution and physical violence, the church is incredibly resilient.
Yeah.
In the 1040 window, under strict governmental bans, underground house churches are multiplying. But in Japan, where there is absolute legal freedom and immense prosperity, the cultural soil is the hardest on earth, and the spiritual despair is fatal.
That is wow.
It forces us to ask a provocative question. Does complete societal freedom and comfort actually breed the ultimate spiritual resistance?
That is a deep question.
Jesus was not speculating in Matthew 24, verse 14. He was announcing the shape of history. The question isn't if the gospel will reach every nation, but how you will be part of it. What happens when your 15 minutes of quiet prayer in your living room becomes the tipping point for an unreached people group on the other side of the world?
Wow. Does freedom create the hardest soil? That is a brilliant paradigm shift to carry with you all week. And it underscores exactly why we need to be engaged in this work, blessing the nations through prayer, knowledge, and obedience. That is the core mission of Missions Connect.
it is an invitation to be part of an unstoppable global movement.
It really is. To take the next step and join this journey, make sure you download the web-based Missions Connect app. You can do that by clicking the link in the description, or you can simply visit assistingtoobey.com.
And don't do it alone.
Exactly. Please don't do this in isolation. Invite your friends, your family, your small group, and join the wider community by following Assisting to Obey's social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
The bombs in Myanmar, the legal bans in the 1040 window, the cultural walls in Tokyo, they are formidable, but they are not the end of the story.
Not even close. Jump into week 19 on the app, and we will see you next time on the Deep Dive.
So, you want a faith that actually matters, right? You want to make a difference in the world, to see the gospel changing lives, to know that your walk with God and His Word is impacting more than just your own life. Yeah, you want your life to count for the nations. But here's the thing. You're busy, maybe overwhelmed. You're pulled in 20 different directions. And even though you want to engage in missions and the Great Commission, you don't always know what to pray for, what's happening globally, or what your next step should be. The desire to obey is there, but the pathway isn't always clear. Let the Missions Connect app show you the way. Every day, you'll get a missions-focused devotional with a simple, practical action step and an option to share with the Missions Connect community. Every week, you get 3 strategic prayer focuses with fresh daily text and audio prayers, so you're never guessing about what to pray for. And when you're ready, you'll find opportunities to actually get involved in God's global work. Everything in the devotional and prayer section is free forever, but we offer you the opportunity to try the premium version for 15 days. You want to impact the nations with the gospel? With Missions Connect, now you can. Missions Connect, helping you bless the nations through prayer, knowledge, and obedience. A ministry of assistingtoobey.com.